Yes, so this is The Guardian reporting on something that's happened in Scotland. Trans woman guilty of raping 2 women, remanded in female prison in Scotland. Now, obviously, I know a lot more about this than you two, so let's get on with it. This is the thing that they said wouldn't happen, has happened. It's happened before, but the fact that it's happened literally 2 days after they said that it wouldn't, in the line of... the government now, the UK government, has basically said, they've invoked this Section 35 to say, basically, to stop this gender self-ID law go through. And one of the things that the Scottish Parliament voted on was saying that they actually voted down was the idea that a rapist would be able to gender self-ID.
There was an amendment proposed,
and it lost. And they lost that amendment. And they were like, no, don't worry about it. And this is what happened. This man who has raped 2 women is now in a female jail.
OK, right. Well, Graham, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, as Josh said, it's not really my area. But, like, the interesting thing about this for me is that The Guardian has had to cover it, because The Guardian competes with Pink News and The Metro and The Independent as being the kind of Pravda of this movement. So when they actually report on something... Yeah. It's really big, you know.
They mostly ignore it, right?
They mostly ignore it. Like, for instance, there was a story about the Wee Spa. I think it was in Los Angeles, and 3 times the Guardian tried to make out that it was a hoax, and in the end, it was discovered that the person who was exposing themselves to women in that spa wasn't a trans woman, or at least, you know, that was just what he was calling himself. He was actually a sex offender who I think is still on the loose. So this is something that they can't ignore. It's almost, you know, despite the seriousness of what's happened, it's almost comic that you have a man who's literally put a wig on to cover up a giant face tattoo that seems to be the same as the one that Mike Tyson used to have.
We can see it there. So that's the rapist.
Yeah.
And now, since being arrested, identifies as female.
Yeah.
And will be housed in a women's prison.
Yeah.
It is absolutely unbelievable.
And they said in the
there's the...
Yeah. He cropped it strangely. There's a photo with his crotch, very large, but the papers have strangely cropped that bit out.
Interesting.
And they keep doing it. They keep calling him a trans woman. He's not a trans woman. He's not any kind of woman. He's a man who's making monkeys of the whole of society. They apparently prosecutors described him as preying on vulnerable women. Well, luckily for him, women's prisons are full of vulnerable women. A lot of the women in prison have apparently, the number is something like 60%, have blunt force trauma to the head that was delivered by a former lover or boyfriend or whatever. So these women are some of the most vulnerable women in the country. And basically, Scottish politicians have put this man in to their prisons with these women.
How can this be the case? I mean, Josh, you know, why does it even matter if he feels that he's a woman or not? Actually,
he doesn't.
Right? No, probably not. But
it's a lie. It's like, you know. There's people like him. There's also we uncovered a big story this week about Beth Douglas, I think the name is, who is a prostitute, like abusive male. They actually stood up in the Scottish Parliament and applauded him when they passed the law that put this guy into female prisons. So, you know, and they're just lying. They're just men.
And it shouldn't matter. Look, a rapist of women shouldn't be in a women's prison.
Even if it's all real and they genuinely have gender dysphoria and all that stuff, it doesn't matter. They're prioritising the rights of that person over the rights of vulnerable women. And the crazy thing is that seeing this stuff online today is like, people are like, oh, it never happens. And then it's like, oh, well, what about this? Oh, well, it's just happened once. It's like, how many women need to be threatened or raped before it's OK for you? Like 5? What's the exact number?
Well, that's the interesting thing.
And it's not just once, and it's not just twice.
The SNP are effectively saying, we will accept a few rapes, a few sexual assaults on women for our agenda, right?
Yeah, just like the children who are being transitioned, female prisoners are a live experiment. That's basically what's being done. They're being experimented on with this new social...
But this story will change things, won't it, Graham? Because, I mean, you yourself on your Substack have collected together so many examples of when this kind of thing has happened before. If this is not an isolated incident, this is not a first time, you've got evidence, right?
Yeah,
and yet,
of course you do. I mean, but here's the funny thing. You don't need evidence because we are, like, thinking human beings and we know that men pose a danger to women. for some reason, we're all involved in this great pretense of, well, we don't actually know all this stuff. Of course we know this stuff.
Well, interesting.
Our societies are built on it.
David Blunkett gave a great talk on a rival news channel today where he basically said exactly what we're saying now. And that's the first time I've seen a Labour male politician actually really standing up and just going, this is wrong.
That's interesting, isn't it? Things are changing.
Well, he's obviously not on the front bench, but it's amazing to me that Labour is giving the Tories such an open goal on this. And it's like how they still haven't educated themselves properly.
I know we have to move on, but let me just very quickly read this. It says here, The Guardian understands that a case conference takes place within 24 hours of any prisoner's arrival involving SBS staff with NHS and psychological input and an equality and diversity officer in order to assess risk, and that segregation decisions must be reviewed at least monthly. Here's an idea. Just don't put rapists in female prisons.
Yeah, I think that sort of says
How
it all.
much money would that save?
That says it all. OK.